All right, who's excited for one more American accent? Anybody? Anybody? I'll try really hard with the hard R's, kind of soften it up a little bit. So anyways, yeah, I'm Ryan Orsi from WatchGuard. I'm Director of Strategic Alliances in the Product Management team. And I'd like to accomplish a couple of things here today. One is to hopefully tell you a bit of a story about this is public Wi-Fi security, so much of what Dan was just talking about and previous speakers about this is unencrypted, open SSIDs. And yeah, WatchGuard is a cybersecurity company. Recently, we've invested heavily in the Wi-Fi space because we see it as a natural progression of two kind of sides of the world, the security aspect and the access aspect coming together. So I'd like to kind of paint that story for you. Hopefully you'll learn something a bit new, a bit different today. Feel free to ask me questions as we go. And number two, I'd like to have a little bit of fun. So hopefully we can all enjoy this presentation together. So to start things off, what I usually kind of introduce people to is a similar, hopefully a familiar picture, right? We've all experienced it as consumers, walking into, say, a department store like this you see on the screen here. Nice department store offering men's suits, women's shoes, and free public Wi-Fi, right? Probably for several reasons. And what do we really see happening here is enhanced customer satisfaction. That's a no-brainer. My wife puts little Jacob, a 2-year-old, in the shopping cart, has the iPad out with the Netflix on there and connected to the store Wi-Fi. So when he freaks out, my wife doesn't leave the store. She stays, that sale stays in the store, right? It's a nice way to keep business flowing through that store. Also, there's probably some location-based analytics, of course. We've all heard about this, right, of just the business owners and the marketing people deciding, where's the optimal placement of product and aisles and people to get them to flow through the store the way they want them to. Most likely there's mobile engagements. I guarantee you there's some kind of a splash page, right? Sign in with maybe social media, maybe offer your cell phone number, because that business would like to then promote to that person, turning anonymous shoppers into actual marketing leads and sales leads for that business that they can promote to later on. But now from the world of what WatchGuard sees, because we're coming again from a cybersecurity perspective, this is an attractive, easy pool of target people that are looking for open SSIDs, and I'll go into some information about exactly how easy it is to use 10, 12-year-old attacks, Wi-Fi attacks. I can even show you some later on today if you'd like, but maybe not right now. To take advantage of this type of public hotspot environment, which has all these great benefits to the business, to the world, to the consumer, but there is some security aspects we need to be aware of. So it's an ocean of opportunity for the bad people. Not to say bad guy or bad girl, but it's bad people, right? To insert whatever you're doing on a hotspot network. Who's guilty of maybe checking your travel itinerary and typing in your password right on a public hotspot without doing a VPN connection? Yeah, right? Or okay, here's a better one. Who actually uses a VPN connection when you're connected to a public Wi-Fi hotspot? All right, that's good. That's about a fourth, maybe a third of the room. If the way we look at it at WatchGuard is if, say, for product management terms, a persona is my mom. If my mom is going to go into a coffee shop, jump on the public Wi-Fi, if she doesn't understand how to use that VPN client or accept that certificate or whatever you have to do to protect yourself, then it's not a 100% solution in our minds. So there's someone also you may or may not be aware of. I was looking for a little pointer. I'll point. Rick Farina, if you've ever heard of the name, is the director of R&D at Pony Express. Is anyone watch the TV show Mr. Robot? All right, okay, cool. Yeah, we like it a lot. Our CTO does some great video commentaries on Mr. Robot if you haven't seen it. But anyways, on that show, it kind of takes you through the life of a hacker, a really deep, dark hacker, right? But there is some actual factual content to what they're showing on that show. And one of the tools they use was they use what's called a pwn phone. And if you don't know, pwn to own just means that this phone has been like jailbroken and customized, and it's now a hacking tool to walk into public areas and get people's information intercepted. That was actually created by Rick here, so we're in tight communication. And I asked him, I said, hey, I'm about to present at that Wi-Fi Now in London, and I guarantee a lot of people are going to be hearing about the BBC, the CNN, and NBC, they're not covering a lot of these articles, right, about massive Wi-Fi attacks. And what you really hear about is you hear about the breach. You hear about the means to, you don't hear about the means to the end. you hear about the end, right? So guaranteed, Wi-Fi attacks are happening all the time, but they're not exactly known or even covered by the media because they're a layer 2 attack, right? It's a means to get to that person who might be working for a large corporation at a nearby coffee or sandwich shop from that big company to access their credentials. Maybe it's for their personal shopping site, but there's a pretty high chance that the credentials they're using for that personal shopping site might also be the same credentials they use at work. Anyone guilty of that one, right? Kind of reusing the same password over and over. So that's very, very popular, but we don't hear about this in the evening news. It doesn't break the news. Now, you might be saying to yourself, what's Austin Powers doing on the screen, number one? You might be saying to yourself, wait a tick. Didn't we already solve this problem of layer 2 Wi-Fi hacking with something way back in the 2000s? WIDS, or by show of hands, who's familiar with the term wireless intrusion detection system? All right, that's pretty few. All right, so what I'll say is, it's a technology built into using the same RF chipsets that you use for Wi-Fi access to connect a client to. It's software, right, that uses that radio to scan the airwaves, and it's looking for devices that are known bad, known good, and it's trying to classify them into different buckets. These access points are good, these access points are bad, these clients are good, these clients are bad, and it's able to do that and detect when there's a rogue or there's a denial of service attack or what's called a man-in-the-middle attack. I'll explain that in just a second. But it's looking at these low-level wireless methods and techniques that are used to get yourself in the middle of a Wi-Fi connection. So a bad guy would be in the middle, the unsuspecting victim would be connected to that bad guy, but thinking they're actually connected to the Wi-Fi of the hotel or the shopping mall, but that bad guy then is connected to the internet. So you have no idea that your traffic is just flowing right through this bad guy. Now, this system, WIDS, is all about detecting these bad things from happening, but it doesn't do anything about it, right? It'll create like a log entry in some dashboard or a log file that a human being has to go through and read line by line, and Joe has to kick Bob, and Bob has to wake up and figure out, was this an actual, rogue access point entered into my environment? And if so, where the heck is it? I don't know where it's located. It might take it, hours or days to actually find that and shut it down. Meanwhile, the attacker has already gotten the data thereafter, and they're gone. So shortly after, a couple years later, there was something called wireless intrusion prevention. It was just a little play on that word, right? Detection from prevention. So now that this technology is able to detect Wi-Fi attacks, why can't we shut them down without having to get that human involved, right? So instead of just creating the log line and having a human go deal with it, can we send basically like a protective shield in the air and make sure that bad device, that either it's a client, it's a phone, it's a laptop, or it's a rogue access point, be able to shut that down automatically. Now, I'll explain in a second. So when I use the term WIPS, I'm talking about the second one, actually preventing. WIDS is actually the first one. And the answer to that long-winded question there was it really depends on who the problem was solved for. Was it solved for large companies, small companies, medium-sized companies? What kind of workforce or expertise do you have to leverage a technology like that? And I know a lot of vendors will kind of mull over that point, but I think it's a very key point to a 100% solution for a widespread audience. So there's a company, you probably heard of them, TechTarget. They analyzed every WIPS product on the market, and this was kind of their unfiltered feedback of any WIPS is going to require constant monitoring, and I'm highlighting things in red because when I hear that at WatchGuard, I hear that's not easily scalable. It's not going to be for the mid-market, the SMB space as well, which, as you know, there's many delis and coffee shops that would fall into those areas. So administrators can respond to successful attacks. They need to frequently tune and customize these detection signatures. So detection signature is whether something is classified as a good device, a bad device. There's all these criteria that goes into it. And it's critically important to do that. So you have to manually tune the system to make sure that you can minimize false positives and negatives. Because imagine if you have WIPS turned on from your access point in your location, and it accidentally thinks that the hospital next door is rogue, If it shuts down the Wi-Fi and disrupts like VoIP phones for the hospital next door, that's a serious offense. That's some legal ramifications. So that's been a problem. And essentially, what's on the market today right now is the solution really works for large enterprises. It is in place out there. And there's probably an army of these, and I don't know if they're subterranean, but that's the way I kind of vision them in my mind. Subterranean enterprise WIPS experts, these people that are in there watching the system, responding to threats that are wireless of nature, tweaking those signatures, figuring out if things are really a strong positive or a weak positive, and pulling out rogue access points. What's happened is, the rest of the world, the small businesses, the medium enterprises, some of the large, even the large retail chains that I've talked to, that's not really a system for them. Or if it is, it puts a lot of heavy work on the service provider that's managing these networks. So one small plug, because I think it's important to know kind of where this presentation's coming from. But at WatchGuard, when I said, when I hear things like constant maintenance and manual intervention, I don't think it's going to be a great scalable solution for a couple of reasons. What we're focused on at WatchGuard is taking what's been traditionally, the high-end enterprise technology, and we make that available to the mid-market, distributed enterprises, companies that have many, many locations across different countries, and we make it very widely deployable. So that has to go with, the management of it, the deployment of it, the ongoing service afterwards has to be fairly simplistic. What we do this with, with UTM Security appliances. If you're not familiar with that term, it's basically a box, a device, or a virtual image that you send traffic through, and it's basically like a deep content inspection. It's going to check for malware. It's going to check for viruses, intrusion attempts that are not of wireless nature. And we also do that with actual Wi-Fi product managed in the cloud. So we're talking access points managed in the cloud. And we do that for companies kind of like this that are on the list here, right? These companies have lots of locations, franchises, and they're companies that you and I walk into and, order a sandwich from or purchase a coffee from. And that to me is also, part of the major thing here. In general, I would say WatchGuard focuses on one concept as a company, right? We focus on that cybercrime is coming or even already has come to what we call main streets or high streets here in the UK. And what we're talking about is, the sophisticated, targeted attacks trying to get the credentials of somebody that works at some large corporation is happening and occurring right in the SMB space, in the mid-enterprise space, for a number of reasons. And these attacks can be coming from people that are global hacktivists. We know they're coming from what you would call script kiddies. There's over 200,000 something videos on YouTube teaching you how to hack using Wi-Fi. I picked it up last week. I did a show in Belgium, a lot like this, for some people in the room that were business owners of various verticals, and kind of went through a whole demonstration. And I'm no hacker, but in my hotel room, I got on there, and I kind of looked around what to do, called up one of our sales engineers in the back of the room, and lo and behold, I was actually able to demonstrate putting myself in the middle. As people came in the room, their phones are automatically connecting to me, because how many of us have that little option turned on in your phone that it'll remember the network that you were just connected to? You come back into the coffee shop, automatically connects. That's called a karma attack. So basically this little device, which is freely available on the internet, responds to the broadcasts of your phones. So your phones are constantly saying, whatever your home SSID is, is Orsi Home 123 available? This little device, which I may be in Belgium, right, says, yeah, it's available. Go ahead and connect. And your clients, they're pretty dumb. They don't have any logic built into them to not do that. So they'll automatically connect. And we did a little demonstration showing how easy it is to then, now that I'm in the middle of that traffic in between my phone, there's this device, then there's the internet. We showed that you can type in your username and a password to some very popular, SaaS applications like Facebook, PayPal, Gmail. And if you're not paying perfect attention, you think it's HTTPS, you think it's encrypted. But the device actually translates from it to the Facebook servers as HTTPS, so Facebook thinks it's okay. But from it to your computer or your phone is actually plain text, and it's just pulling off the credentials right away. So this exists all the time, and it's not something it takes hours to set up. It can happen in a couple of minutes. some of the reasons why we see these attacks coming to the small organizations or the medium-sized organizations, which make up a very large portion of businesses in the world in general, is that they are perceived to be the weak link, right? Their investments and budgets for cybersecurity products and protection is perceived to be lower than, say, those large enterprises, and that may or may not be true depending on the practice that they implemented for their IT security or what kind of service provider is maintaining that network. But in general, it's considered the low-hanging fruit. Also, it's what we call a chain of trust window to larger fish. Instead of trying to get into some government's back-end database right away, what if you went to a subcontractor? A great example, right, is Target, right? The original hack actually went through like the HVAC, the small medium business that was servicing the HVAC. That password is actually compromised, and that's what was used to get into the system. So it's cyber criminals targeting these small businesses, which they think are the weakest link, to get to the larger fish. They also feel like it's going to be, when you attack an SMB or a mid-sized enterprise, less attention, less chance to go to jail. Basically, right? They think that the chances of that company having a cyber forensics team, that if they even realize they might have gotten hacked by looking at some server log, there's very little opportunity or probability that there's going to be a forensics team digging into exactly where the attack came from, because that costs a lot of money to do cyber forensics. Now, SMBs themselves, they have valuable data. Sometimes, right? Anyone processing credit cards. It's been fully commoditized on the dark web by now, but a credit card, or what's even more valuable now on the dark web than credit cards or even personal identities, is identities of children, unfortunately. So any record at schools, they're being definitely targeted now. These small little schools around rural parts of the world are being targeted because that data is even more valuable. It's considered clean. It's not quite been on the grid yet. And plain old opportunistic attacks. These are automized attacks, like you've just heard in the news about the east coast of the US and parts of the UK and some other parts of Europe being taken down by a distributed denial of service attack. It was launched from what's called a botnet. So a botnet is just a robotic network of computers. Now, we just heard from Dan, a computer is also the IP camera, it's the baby monitor, it's your DVR for your TV system. Anything with an IP address is running some kind of flavor of Linux, Unix, a Windows system, Android, and it can be leveraged and turned into a zombie, basically. And those things can then, again, do some opportunistic attacks in a fully automated fashion. So anyways, the point here being, if you take it from Visa, for example, that small businesses in that category, and the small businesses is under a couple thousand employees, represent over 90% of what gets reported to them for data breaches. So the problem is definitely real. So now I'm gonna switch back a little bit here to what makes the best public hotspot. I'm a big fan of graphical representation, so I've got these smiley faces. Just offering plain old Wi-Fi access was probably cool 5, 8, 9 years ago, right? Just telling people there's a hotspot here, you can get to the internet. Then saying there's a hotspot here, but to the business owner or to the marketing team, we're also going to partner up with some third party to do some engagement. So to be able to capture anonymous customers or visitors, like at the train station, for example, please sign in using your cell phone number, please sign in using Facebook or Twitter. That turns that anonymous person into someone like of a marketing lead that they could then promote to later. So it's adding more valuable information and services to the hotspot. Add on to that, again, this is more of a benefit to the business offering the Wi-Fi. Besides Wi-Fi access to the internet, engaging splash pages to generate leads and promote to them, offer analytics, so show where people tend to flow, how long they dwell, that kind of thing, right? Be able to present to a string of retail franchises. Stores 1, 5, and 35 are doing really well on Saturday between 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. What's going on there? We need to figure that out and replicate it across the other 40 stores. And I'll say that what really makes a cool Wi-Fi hotspot is if you make this secure, right? Security really should not be overlooked. I do some presentations around IoT security. I've talked with the hackers that hacked the Jeep Cherokee last summer. That was a big deal at Black Hat. I think security just can't be underemphasized. And I'm not talking about putting a passphrase on the SSID. I'm talking about making the hotspot that we all use today safe to use. So you can't have these attacks come in and put themselves in the middle of the data transfer and do that kind of stealing of passwords and of usernames, credit card information. Identity theft happens a lot on Wi-Fi networks. So the strategy at WatchGuard, I think, is also important to understand that what's kind of happening in the market, and I see this as more of a movement in the market, is to really focus on wireless security or Wi-Fi security in general, and not just what's been implemented by the IEEE, but I'm talking about being able to continuously monitor for attack and be able to respond to it. Deliver Wi-Fi with a return on investment, right? So Wi-Fi, we've heard from many presenters today, is not just about accessing the internet. It's about, for that business, for that municipality, for that city, to be able to show return on what they're actually expensing. So it makes everyone's life easier in actually implementing that service. And this is maybe more of a WatchGuard particular thing, but to keep it simple for everybody, right? So we don't want to be coming up with the most killer technology if it takes an army of subterranean WIPS experts to actually use it. So we have a huge focus on simplicity. That's what our corporate blog is all about, this simplicity. That's also where you could get kind of, if you haven't watched Mr. Robot, you can get all the quick highlights from our CTO on that one. He does a great job recapping. So one quick plug about what this Wi-Fi cloud is all about. It kind of pulls that whole hotspots together. Is the patented wireless security process that we're using is very unique. I'll explain that in a next slide. But it's the ability, again, to prevent bad things from happening without accidentally knocking down the hospital or the hotel next door. We're also packing in the engagement, right? So logging in with social media, designing splash pages, it's all in the same solution. So is location-based services, so being able to tell where people are, where they go, and a very, very extensive reporting package there for managed service providers to deliver back to their customers. And the management itself is also very important when you're talking about large public networks. Being able to maintain that across a scalable cloud solution and also generate the configurations from like one top level and have it just propagate all the way through the thousands and thousands of hotspots that exist, that's very key. Because when you're responding to a threat, you need to be able to make sure those configuration changes that you might need to make can happen really fast. No, I didn't see many hands up about wireless intrusion detection, but for anyone that knows about WIPS or has installed it or purchased it or even understands it, does this question make any sense? Do you turn on automatic prevention? Anybody? Okay, we've got one. I'm going to talk to you afterwards. That's usually a zero for, I've done this about 30 times now. Most people have never raised their hand. You're number one. I'm going to have to meet you. And the reason for that being this guy, right? It is illegal in many countries. I'm not sure what the legislation is country by country, but tampering with legitimate neighboring Wi-Fi networks is illegal. So like I said, if you accidentally classify an access point that's just close enough to you, but it's not yours, it's the neighbor's, and it's not actually doing any kind of denial of service attack, so it's not trying to flood your network and take it down. It's just sitting there serving up a voice over IP phone system for the nurses in that healthcare organization. If you take that down or interrupt the service, and they can prove it, that's bad. That has some legal ramifications. So the key here is about the ability to install that WIPS solution that Austin Powers was telling us about, to be able to implement a solution using the same Wi-Fi radios that you're used to today, but to be able to enable automatic hands-free prevention. That makes it widely deployable. That makes it a solution for all retail, all hospitals, of all sizes, right? All education markets, because it doesn't require that level of deep expertise into writing the signatures. The more tweaking and manual intervention that is there, the more opportunity is to introduce an anomaly in the system and actually miss something. So what the system does is it categorizes, like I said, access points as well as Wi-Fi clients, even your smartwatches. It'll basically classify something as good, bad, or it's external. It's not anything we should be worried about. How it does that is kind of unique, and I think it might be important for some of the technical folks in the room. I know a few of them stopped by the booth, so I know we do have some techies here. So basically, you've got these access points. These are standard Wi-Fi, dual radio, 11 AC access points. They are managed in the cloud. They don't send any data to the cloud, right? It's only the configuration changes that you send back down to the access point. And they communicate amongst themselves, and they communicate on the network. And they're sending out these little tiny packets, which are very unique. And I'll explain that in just a second. The way those packets work, say you have an access point installed in the ceiling, and it's sending these little tiny packets. These are rebroadcast packets. This is really kind of where the secret sauce is. It's sending it down the network cable into the switching equipment, and then floating around the rest of the network to any other access point that's an IEEE 802.11 radio. And that radio picks it up, rebroadcasts the packet into the air. And along the way, we're kind of digitally fingerprinting everything that it touched, right? And so it's like a closed loop system. We should expect to receive that packet back in the air, out the wire, into the air, and we should be able to receive it in a certain way with certain MAC addresses tied to it, and we know, okay, that was rebroadcasted by something that is managed by us, it's on the same network as us, so therefore it's green and it's authorized. So it's not a rogue access point. We do the same thing wirelessly. So from the radios themselves, we send these packets out the radio into the air, and all of your phones and your laptops and everything are picking up this packet because it's a standard little rebroadcast datagram. And whatever access point you're connected to then receives the packet, goes back into the system. And if we happen to see that packet, that means, you're not meant to be on our network. This access point is actually, Susan in accounting who plugged in some other access point into the wall, or even better yet, someone's turned their phone into a mobile hotspot, tethered their laptop to it, and now they just bypassed corporate network security. I'm sure many of us are a little guilty. This service is blocked. The stupid firewall got me. I'll turn on my hotspot. This would detect that as this exact way, hey, I'm not supposed to be using this. It's not an access point that I manage or is authorized. So it would actually send very standard IEEE deauthentication packets telling the phone to go away and telling your laptop to go away, and then it'll force it to connect to whatever authorized access point that you actually have. And these are standard IEEE packets. It's not any kind of radio jamming. You might have read about a certain hotel chain that got in trouble for jamming. We don't do that. This is more of like a scalpel. So we go just after what was identified, just the particular client, and we leave everything else alone. So apologies for the technical dive, but I thought, well, for one, the person that made the slide did a pretty cool job, so I wanted to show off the animation. But it's also pretty educational, I hope. And by the way, in this scenario, when we rebroadcast this to the neighboring hotel or coffee shop next door, they're not going to rebroadcast it to us because there's no physical link back to our network. And that's the way we know 100% for sure that it's not a rogue or it's not an access point that we control. Therefore, we're not going to shut it down. And that's the big difference. That's why none of you heard about whips or none of you actually raised your hand except for that one gentleman there, which I'll find later. But that's the reason why it's happening. So the other big kind of theme that I wanted to talk about real fast, and I know I'm coming up on my 5-minute warning here, is like I said, what makes the coolest hotspot? Security can't be overlooked, but engagement analytics can't also, right? That's the ROI of Wi-Fi. So anyone that's in the service provider or telco or MSO business, this is really key, right? Be able to say that the public hotspot can be safe and secure, number one. And number two, right? It makes your job selling it and installing it a lot easier if you don't have to go upsell third-party services on top of that to your customer. Or if you don't have to go take that into your organization if you're the actual purchaser, right? So we don't believe in this concept of waking up on Christmas morning with your new toy and not having the batteries to play with it. So what we're doing here is we're putting in all the engagement and analytics directly into the same security access points. So this whole thing is centered around secure Wi-Fi, and it has to do with this kind of 3-step process of engaging with the public in a safe, secure way, right? So making sure that there are no attackers like our demonstration that I didn't show off today yet, but we can later. So there's no people or attackers that could even possibly come into a public hotspot and take advantage of people. Engage with them as well, right? So be able to extract that data and now put an identity to that person in a very safe and private way. And then the second step is about once you've identified and interacted with this person, especially for brick and mortar retail, we can actually intercept a URL, right, and say, hey, how many times have you gone into the electronics store, looked at that really cool TV, and you thought, I bet I can get a better price online. So you go to your online retailer, and you're price shopping. Most likely you just came in there to pick up the toy, and you're going to buy it online from somebody else. If you are connected to the Wi-Fi of the store, this could intercept that URL, the top-level domain, and push like an SMS coupon to you or an email to you or a Facebook message and say, hey, whoa, please, we'll match or beat any price you're looking at online by 5% if you take this little QR code right to the till, and please keep the sale in the store, right? So that's all about promoting and keeping the business in that store. And of course, afterwards, this is kind of like post-analytics, right? Be able to tell where, why did everyone, congregate along that back wall? Is there something about the way the door is, the way the shelves are laid out? Is there a product there that's really hot? Maybe we should move some of our less performing products into that location to try to sell more, right? So it's about doing analytics across all of your locations. I'll probably skip that. Now, for anyone in the service provider business, what I often tell people after I get this whole package of secure Wi-Fi, it's not just about security, but that is, in my opinion, a service you could be offering, or even you should be asking for, is the actual security of that public hotspot, or even corporate Wi-Fi as well. They kind of both fall under the same umbrella, but be able to actually look at what specific wireless vulnerabilities are you vulnerable to? Did you get protected against? How many rogue clients or access points were actually detected in your environment? And that's a scheduled weekly or monthly report that you could consume, or your IT organizations can consume. The second bit is all about PCI, Wi-Fi compliance. There's definitely specific wireless compliance rules with PCI for anybody accepting credit cards within that business. And this will point out exact violations and tell you what to do about it. And the third would be, managed Wi-Fi analytics. So, of course, that means working with yourselves, with your customers, whatever you might be on, which side of the fence you're on, whether you're a customer or a service provider, and coming up with the analytics that make the most sense to optimize that business. So again, the core message has been security for public hotspots, but in general, we realize that fits into a larger puzzle. Security is totally key, but it's a larger puzzle of a bigger picture. So with that, I think I'm going to wrap up and send it over to Klaus. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ryan. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Klaus.
Any questions for Ryan? Don't go away. We've got questions for you. Come
I
over.
almost ran away.
Oh no, you can't do that. Any questions for Ryan? So first of all, here's the $1 million question. So if you go with this, are you 100% safe and secure in every instance?
My CTO would probably slap me if I said 100%, right? There's no 100% security solution for any problem, right? But you are massively far ahead if you adopt this kind of a intrusion prevention technique.
Right.
So you have dedicated monitoring and automatic prevention. Those are the key bits, is automatic prevention.
Right. And I understand your solution to be tied to your hardware. So this is something that's also hardware specific for WatchGuard, right?
It is hardware specific. There's some actual custom things we have to do with the chipset in order to make this work. So yeah, it is custom.
And just a general comment maybe from you on the market demand for this, because last year we actually did, in Amsterdam when we did the first Wi-Fi Now event, we had a whole day dedicated to Wi-Fi security. I thought at the time, it actually went quite well, but I thought it was going to be a fantastic thing and we're going to have hundreds of people because there's a big hot topic. And it is a hot topic and it was a good day, but we thought we were maybe a little bit early. Last year, on and off, it's super hot, and of course the need has always been there. Have we seen an inflection point now in terms of now we really need it because there's so much public Wi-Fi, or how do you see that?
I absolutely think it's been an inflection point. I would say even the year and a half, 2 years ago was a little bit early. Absolutely.
Yes.
We've been passively kind of monitoring things and working on this. And I'd say, yeah, it's really about the explosion of public Wi-Fi, right? And yes, definitely some things that Dan also covered as well to reference the carrier offload onto Wi-Fi movement has put a lot of security concerns as well as compatibility, but security concerns right in the forefront. And I think that has helped bring the awareness up. It's a problem that's existed forever, but the education of the market and the awareness of it is starting to happen, I'd say, even just this past year.
And here in Europe and in the UK, you're represented independently as yourselves or through channels? What do you do?
Are you asking about
Yeah.
here in the UK?
Yeah, sorry, here in the UK and in Europe, sorry. Yes.
Oh, yeah, we've got a local team in the UK, very friendly people. You can come by and see them today.
Okay.
We're headquartered in Seattle. We've been in business 20 years, so there's offices all over the world.
Right, okay, very good.
Yeah.
Ryan, it's great to have you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Klaus.
And please come back and see us again. It was a pleasure.
I will.
All right.